Andy, I know you've never been happier than when you're sitting by a warm fire, snuggled up in a flannel and basking in the glow of an old-school budget spreadsheet.
It is a special day I can shut down the world for a little me time.
In a world full of applications, why do these antiquated documents and spreadsheets still run the world? And why haven't they been updated in over 50 years? That's why we want to talk about Coda.
Coda is a new kind of doc that brings words, data, and teams together. It comes with a set of building blocks that anyone can combine to create a doc as powerful as an app.
Coda runs our entire business here at True Story FM, from show scheduling across dozens of podcasts and scripts for thousands of episodes, to budgets and plans and wikis and more.
Coda lets us see our business in a new light. If you'd like to shine a light on productivity in your business and save money along the way, check out Coda today at thenextreel.com/Coda. It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear,
like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise we aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.
Welcome to Silver Linings, part of the Next Reel family of film podcasts on True Story FM. Have you ever liked or even loved a movie that everyone else just seems to hate? Well, you are not alone, my friend. We look at movies that are often panned by critics and audiences to see if their hate is warranted. Sure, we'll talk about what might be broken, but more important, we talk about what really works in these films, with the hope that we change some minds along the way. Perhaps even yours? So, sit back, relax, and let's take the guilt out of guilty pleasures. This is Silver Linings. Hello, I'm Ray, your eternal optimist.
And I'm Ocean. For this episode of Silver Linings, we'll be taking a look at John Carpenter's 1996 film, Escape from L.A.
Welcome to the theater. For everyone's enjoyment, we'd like to remind you of the following rules. No talking. No smoking. No littering. No red meat. No freedom of religion. And remember, all marriages must be approved by the Department of Health. Failure to obey these rules will result in immediate loss of citizenship and deportation to the island of Los Angeles. Enjoy the show.
Your rules are really beginning to annoy me.
We ran a psycho profile on him using a database of 5 million sociopathic personalities. He hit the bottom of the curve.
Catches on quick, doesn't she?
This town loves a winner.
We say we play a little Bangkok Rules. Nobody draws until this hits the ground. You ready? Draw. You got a problem with that?
All right, Ocean, we have a big one here this episode.
Yes, we do. Escape from L.A., a movie that I personally knew about when it was in theaters. I did not, however, see it when it was in theaters. I was
Why
in
not?
college at the time. I was in college at the time, and I just, had other things going on.
Other things going on.
Exactly. I just had to do other things. So then after a few years, I, went down to my local Blockbuster. Yes, Blockbuster was still around back then. And so I went to Blockbuster and rented it and, rented the movie, saw it, and really enjoyed it. How were you introduced?
About a year ago, I was trying to watch as many John Carpenter movies as I could that I hadn't yet seen because I'm a big fan of The Thing and Halloween and everything that I'd seen of Carpenter's I liked. So I really wanted to get right into his universe there. And as many movies that he made that were good, he really has a couple of stinkers too. This was one of them. I watched Escape from New York first, obviously, and then watched this one. And at the time, I thought that this was inferior to Escape from New York, but I have really grown to love it in the years since.
Yeah, well, I've always preferred this movie, but then, again, I think that I'm biased in a different sense in that I had not seen Escape from New York when I saw this. So when it came out, I had no history or knowledge of who the character Snake Plissken was. But when I did see this, I did enjoy this movie. And I subsequently, actually very recently was the first time I've seen Escape from New York. And having seen them both, I definitely find Escape from L.A. to be the better, more enjoyable movie.
I really find your perspective on, not perspective, but your approach on watching these movies really interesting, like how you watched this one first. And whenever you watched this the first time, did you find yourself wondering about, what came first? Did they establish any of this before? Is there more I should know about Snake Plissken or anything like that?
No, I think the only thing that I found was that in Escape from L.A., he seems to be the most famous outlaw in the world.
Sure, yeah.
And they do establish that he's, basically, although they don't really have the FBI mentioned by name in this movie, he's basically the FBI's number one most wanted. So that it makes sense that everybody else there, a lot of people in LA seem to already know who he is. So I didn't know if he had done something in the previous movie that made him more famous or not. But beyond that, I didn't feel that there was anything about the plot. I didn't feel lost or wondering what happened in Escape from New York. I found that I just, really enjoyed this for what it was. And after having seen Escape from New York, which we can definitely talk about a little bit more later, I definitely understand why I did not feel lost in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
well, there's more we can talk about there, but like you said, we'll touch on that later. But right now, let's talk about the critical consensus for this movie.
Yes, let's do that.
You now have the option to repent of your sins and be electrocuted on the premises. If you elect this option, notify the cleric sergeant in your processing area.
So I think that a good summary of it, the critical consensus was fairly mixed. And but I think that from the Rotten Tomatoes, their overall recap summary of it says, the Escape from L.A. has its moments, although it certainly suffers in comparison to the cult classic that preceded it. And that's the overall summary that they're getting from critics. I don't agree with that entirely, but that is, that's the critics' reviews. The one bad review that I saw that was on Empire Online that was a contemporaneous review was that it was a monumentally misconceived sequel. Escape from L.A. is the huge shonky blemish on the magnificent history of John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. With
Who talks like that?
Oh, no, it goes on. With fatally clunky satire and none of Escape from New York's seedy menace, the film utterly blunts Snake Plissken's edge. Neat cameos, Steve Buscemi, Peter Fonda, Bruce Campbell, liven things up, but by the time Snake surfs cinema's shoddiest CG wave, you'll wish you had patches over both eyes.
Oh, my.
And I think that was a good encapsulation I saw of the negative reviews of it, in that this reviewer, like many at the time, I think, didn't appreciate Escape from L.A. because they were comparing it to the idea in their head from Escape from New York. A lot of people liked it. It became a cult classic, and I think if that's what you had in your head, for some people they weren't able to accept this. Really not so much a sequel, but really more of a remake of Escape from New York.
Sure, I'll concede to that. There you have it. So that being said, it seems like everybody and their mother had something bad to say about this.
Yes.
And a lot of it was the same. Everyone had very similar things to say. And I think there were 3 big points in particular that kept being repeated. I think the first one was what you said, that this is essentially a crappy remake. It's a carbon copy story-wise.
It's not a crappy remake. It is a great remake.
I agree. Otherwise, why would we talk about it on this show? But that's what people say. And to be perfectly honest, it does follow many of the same story points. It starts off the same way, where Snake Plissken is, like you said, this outlaw that's brought in, and they're going to put him in prison. And it just so happens that as he's waiting for the boat or the plane, whatever it is, to take him to the island, that they are in need of his services. So in this one, poison him, or say they poison him, spoiler, and they basically blackmail him into doing their bidding in this movie, going into LA and getting the black box with the weapon, and also to kill the president's daughter, who has turned on him and tried to give over state secrets to the enemy.
Yes, they do that. It's the same plot, right? It is the same plot, and that's fine, right? I think honestly, from a major plot standpoint, the only real difference is you knew in Escape from New York what the tape was for, where in this one, the black box was this mystery component that you didn't really know what it was until pretty much 2/3 in the way through the film, when they finally reveal what it does and what they want. But
right.
Yes, it's the same plot. Right. And so I think that this movie is a good remake, or a good exercise in the filmmaker saying, hey, if we had more money and could do the actual movie we wanted to do and make it a little bit more fun, we'd make this. Because Escape from New York was very gritty and it took itself very seriously, where Escape from L.A. is much more of a, it has the gritty elements of, we're going to take the baddest guy in the country and put him in a hellhole, no-win situation to, have a mission that he needs to complete. But it has more fun with itself, and it doesn't take itself as seriously as Escape from New York.
Right, yeah. And, you could argue all day that one of the biggest problems with a lot of remakes is how it tends to not vary very much from its predecessor. And while that can be a problem with some sequels, I don't think it's always a problem. And I think that this is a perfect example. Like you were saying, it does take the same elements, but it's very different in tone and in execution than Escape from New York. Although it does follow many of the same beats as Escape from New York, it does it very differently. And right there is the key. And right there is also why you could consider this a remake, while it is a sequel. So it's a rebootquel. That's what it is.
Exactly.
You could consider it a remake or a reboot or sequel or whatever. But like we both have said by this point, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, it's very different in tone and in execution. And I think that essentially Carpenter and even Kurt Russell did with this movie what I think they wish they could have done with the first one in many regards. I mean, they had a bigger budget. They had way more experience. They had more to work with. I think they were doing a little bit more with satirizing the Los Angeles of that time to an extent than they did with New York back in the early 80s. So there's a lot there.
Yes, I agree. I think that they wanted to thread the needle and did a decent job of threading the needle between taking some serious ideas, like, having a president who has a lifetime term, making it where he's very, very honestly dictatorial in his approach to how he's governing the United States. He's made a penal colony where it's like, well, if you're going to be, not only if you commit a crime are you there, but if we plan to deport you, we put you over there. Basically, anyone that is considered an undesirable person is then thrown off to the side and then kept away from the good citizens of the United States. And so there's that dark piece of it alongside with a lot of other scenes that that amp up some of the action, but also allow you to really enjoy the movie in its understanding of, hey, we've taken this world and then we've created a situation where we've given our hero an impossible task in a ridiculous mission to do, and then so we're going to amp that up and then amp up the ridiculousness of it all and then really enjoy it and have fun with it. Like, and a great example would be the basketball scene, right?
Yeah.
Game time!
So, so in that scene, it's I enjoy that scene, partially because it's, it's out of place, right? It provides, what it really provides is it's kind of a basic glimpse at the change of the gladiator theme, right? In Escape from New York, they, Skank had a gladiator fight that he had to do to get by, right? So they kind of took that same beat and said, hey, we're just going to have it where you played basketball, right? And so in the entertainment conceit for the people, the masses or the masses in the movie are like, hey, we want to see someone who, thinks they can make it, but ultimately fail, right? Because you're going to have to get you only have 2 points. You got to make 5 baskets full court back and forth in 10 seconds, right? So most, everybody fails. And then once they fail, then they get shot up and everybody's ecstatic, right? And the scene itself, A, it's out of place and it's ludicrous. But B, it's interesting in various ways. Visually, it looks funny with Kurt Russell dribbling a basketball with his golden locks flying in, back behind him. And then also, it is interesting in that, he made all of the shots in the scene, right? That he actually took time because he did it himself and he did make the shots. Now, I don't think he did it all in 10 seconds. But
no,
he did. I think they cut, but he did actually make the shots, and then it made it where it provided a dose of realism of the basketball alongside of with his success, right? So it's a ridiculous, fun scene, right? There's humor in it. You see your hero is then overcoming his next challenge and moving on to get further closer to his ultimate mission goal, and at the same time, it's quirky and fun.
Right. And, in all honesty, a lot of the things that are quote unquote the same as in Escape from New York, I think work a lot better in Escape from L.A. Give you an example. Both movies, he's working on a time limit, right? First movie, he had explosives implanted into his neck that were going to detonate in, I think it was 22 hours. Okay. Then in this movie, instead of getting the explosives implanted, he is scratched and given a virus, or so he is told.
Yes.
And what I like about that is, A, the time limit is different. He only has 8 hours as opposed to 22. And I think that works a lot better because, for one thing, it feels a little bit more realistic than running around New York for 22 hours. But also, as the movie progresses, you can see Kurt Russell act sicker. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
yes.
20 minutes after getting into L.A., he's starting to sweat a lot more, even when he's standing still. And then you see him shaking 40 minutes in. I remember particularly noticing whenever he walked into the basketball court, the scene you were just talking about. And right as he walks in, you can see him like shuddering, and he's like really pale and sickly looking, and he's only got at that point, about an hour left? So
yes,
it's really amped up from what it was in Escape from New York. Also, I thought, quite frankly, I thought the MacGuffin was cooler. Instead of in Escape from New York, I think, what was it? The president had a briefcase full of information on nuclear fusion or something that was supposed to create world peace or something.
If he played this tape, it would give world peace. Yeah.
I mean, like, that's, I don't get me wrong. I love Escape from New York, but that's not nearly as exciting
you're
as
alone there.
What we get here, which is satellite access to basically wipe out all electronics, electricity, anywhere on the globe that you choose, and send that said area to the Dark Ages.
Yeah, it is a more interesting MacGuffin. I mean, you have to also even suspend some of the reality of that, and I think that's part of the thing to say. Like an EMP isn't a permanent state, right? Whereas they were saying that by doing this on the world, if you have an EMP, that it's going to do. That all electronics will cease to work indefinitely. And that's not how an EMP works. But it's still very fun. It's very fun for the movie, right? And so I think that is another instance of where the movie is having more fun with things.
And that's probably why Carpenter didn't end up doing Escape from Earth, which is what they wanted to do after this.
Yes, absolutely.
Had nothing to do with the box office take.
No. Given some of the primary critical instances of it, should we discuss the surfing scene? Because that is the single most disliked scene in the movie. And so if you, so the surfing scene is, it's set up where there's a random surfer played by Peter Fonda who shows up in the beginning of the movie, disappears for most of the movie, and then he shows up near the last third. And in that scene, he happens to be on Wilshire Boulevard, and he's going to go surfing. And so we'll just ignore, and I'll skip over for a minute how our hero Snake Plissken got to Wilshire Boulevard and why he's standing there. But he's there. Peter Fonda's going to start surfing, and as luck would have it, when Snake shows up, he has an extra surfboard. And so from there, then a tsunami is coming because as a result of all of the constant aftershock tremors that LA experiences. They have a tsunami. It's a big tidal wave. The wave of tsunami comes down through Wilshire Boulevard. And then Peter Fonda and Kurt Russell are then surfing. They're surfing down Wilshire Boulevard. They take time to give each other the thumbs up, the high five. They talk for a bit about they're having a lot of fun. And then also then when the scene to end the scene, as Kurt Russell sees while he's surfing, he is actually chasing. Steve Buscemi, who played
Map to the Stars Eddie.
Map to the Stars Eddie. Yes, thank you. So he's chasing Map. So as the scene ends, Kurt Russell is chasing Map of the Stars Eddie, played by Steve Buscemi. And what he does is he rides his surfboard up the wave and then jumps off of it and onto his moving car. And so the scene itself is great. It's great in that it is campy and fun, and it's a bit ridiculous, right? And so I think that the theme of this movie as a whole, you have to you need to go with it. You need to go with and enjoy the fun of what this movie is providing. Now, the scene itself is often derided because of the execution, right? Because the CGI does look. It's not the greatest CGI, right? And CGI, definitely with the surfing idea, it is typically hard to do with water, and so what they had to do the scene was they were using, I don't know if you've seen those. In San Diego, there's a lot of them where they have these surfing bars where it's a bar and it has basically, if you think of it like a forever pool, it's basically like a forever wave. So there's a wave that's constantly going, and you can hop on a surfboard in this bar and then ride the surfboard, right? And so they utilize that as the framework to then build the rest of the scene out. Now, CGI wasn't really caught up with dealing with water and moving water at the time to make it look really good. But also the other problem they had was most people can't do that. Even professional surfers have a hard time riding in surf bars because it is a very different it's a very different type of mechanics than riding on a wave. And so so they had to try to find people that could then do it, that weren't stunt people that they could then, have them set up, do it, and then build the CGI around them. And so I think that, the CGI had a lot of issues. There was a lot of technical issues that definitely were at the time something that had not been solved in order to do it. But the scene itself is still entertaining for the fact that, hey, we're gonna in the middle of this movie, have a surfing bro scene.
Hey, it's just like mozzarella sticks, cheesy goodness in every bite. Am I right?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Couple of things. So you mentioned he just so happened to have a second surfboard with him, but I noticed on last watch, he has more than just that second surfboard. He has at least 3. And that kind of makes sense because the first time we meet Pipeline, the surfer, he has a gun on Snake whenever Snake first arrives in the submarine. And there are several other surfers coming into the beach from the water, and they're like, we want you off our beach. So it kind of makes sense to me that he would have a couple of extra surfboards with him if he's always hanging out with other surfers. Now, as far as the CGI, the first time I watched it, it looks kind of bad, but given the context of the time, this movie came out in 1996.
It did.
There wasn't very much progress in the way of CGI as far as making it look realistic. I mean, CGI had been around and had been being used for some time up to this point in varying degrees. But for instance, I think of the previous year in 1995 when we got the movie Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and how stinking bloody awful the CGI in that movie looked. You compare that to this, and this is like Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's great. I'm not even necessarily saying that it's good. What I'm saying is it's good enough, I think, for what this movie is. It's a cheesy movie. It's not taking itself that seriously. And to be perfectly honest, I can take it with a big enough grain of salt to enjoy it.
Yes, I do as well. And I think that there were some challenges with the water with the CGI that I outlined earlier. But at the same time, I think there is some, with the CGI execution, some of it does have to just fall on that, the people that were doing it were not quite as good because, CGI does move forward. But 3 years later, this is in 96. 3 years later, The Matrix comes out. So CGI doesn't jump that far in 3 years. There is a difference in the people that did it. But for this movie, I felt that as you stated earlier, the bad CGI adds to the movie, right? It adds to the campiness and it adds to the overarching story of what we're saying here, right?
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, let's give credit where credit's due. I do remember seeing in one of the bonus features on the Blu-ray that the people that were doing the special effects for scenes like this, I don't remember the exact name of the company, but I'm pretty sure that it was directly tied in with the studio. They flat out said, up to that point, they had never done digital effects like this. This was the first thing they'd ever done like this. So,
exactly. And it looked like it.
It did. It did. So, hey, you got to cut your teeth somehow.
So another scene to discuss is the meeting of Hershey Las Palmas, and that is the name of Pam Grier's character. And so I think this is another way in which John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, because he has a writing credit on this, took the movie in a direction different than what you would expect. They took the beautiful Pam Grier and cast her as a trans man. They deepened her voice, and it made it sound a little bit strange, and it made that casting choice one in which whenever she was talking, you were never really fully comfortable, with the character, because it just seemed, because you see Pam Grier, She's, very, very well known, very famous. And so you're looking at her. And so then when she starts talking, you expect to hear Pam Grier's voice, right? She's been in a lot of movies, so people know what she sounds like. And so when this other voice comes out, it's still just a little bit off-putting. But, just odd. Yeah, I think odd is a better choice than off-putting. It's just odd.
They dropped it a couple of decibels.
Yes, they did. They dropped a couple of decibels, and so I think that the character itself was really in a way, like we talked about the black box being a MacGuffin, but I think in some ways, so was this character. Right, this character was someone that just so happened to know Snake from the past. Happened to have outstanding. They each believed that they owed each other something. And then, got there, and that character's really sole purpose was to get our hero Snake from point A to point B, was to get him from where they were to the penultimate scene in what was Disneyland, but not Disneyland. And that's really what it was. But I think
Happy Kingdom, I think they call
exactly it was Happy Kingdom. I think was, you're right. But I think that part of what they were trying to do along the way here is there is some idea of character development and plot and story movement with this, right? That you're going to have it where he has relationships with the outside world and he has to deal with the effects of what has happened to him in his past. But really, the character itself is. It's an interesting choice. It seems a bit odd, and then also it makes it where not only is it a little odd, but then also it provides something that at the time seemed a little bit was lesser than what you would thought, which was there is once they get to Happy Land, she basically as a woman is an equal in an action sequence with men, right? She's equally fighting them, fighting hand to hand. She's fighting the same with the guns and everything like that, and that was at the time not as common, right? We cut to maybe 5 years later, you start seeing more and more female action stars, action stars and action vehicles in movies, where at this time it wasn't as common of a thing to do. So I think that the filmmakers deserve some credit in, even though they, did a ham-fisted way to get this in, right? That they did have a scene of where, hey, we're going to have a woman who is going to fight alongside men and it's going to be unequal to them and not someone that needs to be saved.
Yeah. I think it was a bold move to make it a transgender person.
Yes. At the time, that also was nowhere near as common as you'd see in movies now. And even now, it is more common in that it is not shocking, but it is not still something that you see in every movie. And also, you don't see that much in action movies.
Right. And I think it was a great idea, personally, to choose Pam Grier for that role because it's so unexpected, because she is the living embodiment to many people of femininity. And to see her as someone who used to be a man, what was it, Carjack Malone?
Yes. Yes. Well, I only refer to her as Hershey Las Palmas because that was her chosen name.
And that's another thing. I was watching an interview with Kurt Russell, and I think he might have been the one to come up with the idea for a transgender person. And I think the way they came up with the name Hershey was because they just put an R in the word he, she.
Oh, nice. Okay. I always thought it was a candy bar, but the way it is spelled, that does make sense.
But and I also read that whenever she came in to audition for the role, she wore a roll of socks in her pants, which she kept for the movie.
Yes, it was very method,
but you can't really tell.
Yeah, no.
So, but I really, really liked that character, and I really wish that they hadn't waited until close to the end to introduce her, because she has, the moment those two characters meet in the movie, they have such a funny chemistry. Not funny like weird, but funny like entertaining. As soon as she speaks, he says, "I know that voice. Carjack." It's like nobody calls me Carjack.
Right. Yeah, though the two actors did a great job with their chemistry in that they did a good job of portraying people that had known each other for several years and at one time were friends.
Right. And then I also thought it was really funny that, throughout the movie, people are bringing up, this escape that Snake Plissken has had since the previous movie that happened in Cleveland. Everyone's talking about Cleveland. And then you come to find out that the reason Cleveland got botched was because of Carjack/Hershey. And I thought that was a really nice way of kind of bringing that together.
Okay, so then another thing, then I think while we're jumping all over the place about different parts of this movie, there's, one thing that a lot of people have made a big deal of, which was the cameo of Bruce Campbell, and whether or not that went over well, right? Because the scene is very odd, where he's escaping from the Surgeon General?
The Surgeon General of Beverly Hills.
Right. So Bruce Campbell plays that, which honestly, in a role that while I saw him in the credits and I was looking for him for the whole movie, the first time I saw this, I did not recognize that that's who he was.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah. So, and
Rick Baker makeup job.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Very, very good makeup job. So, that scene, there are people that had, different quibbles with that in terms of not only, the makeup or the design or whatever, but also that, they felt that he was somewhat underutilized. The scene for me itself, I thought, was a good way to kind of move forward in the plot, right? At that point, we're so early in, Snake still just got there, and he has done really the same thing that happened in Escape from New York. Met a random woman there,
right?
And then they end up in some form of trouble where their life is threatened, right? And so then they get out of that predicament. And honestly, that to me, that's the scene itself. It's notable for to have like a lot of weird creatures and a lot of ideas about plastic surgery. So you can then discuss and think: are they trying to make a statement about what would happen with plastic surgery run amok? Or if you take it too far or something like that. But I think to me that was just another set of just a weird sequence, right? And the sequence of not only them being caught and then they're escaping, but also I found that for me, and this is I guess my confession about some of my dark humor with this was, so when in that scene he is Kurt Russell Snake is being captured with Taslima, who's played by Valeria Golino. And so they get captured, they escape. And then when they're in an alleyway, or I guess, they're on a bridge. When they're on a bridge afterwards, right? She gives a great little mini speech about, how L.A. is the last place of freedom in the United States. It's the last place of freedom. And, she starts espousing a few other good things about the place. And then she says poignantly, when you get to know L.A., it's not so bad. And then she is immediately shot in the back and dies. Right. And so it's like you just can't win. It's like you really there's this kind of statement of like, even if you've started to come to embrace it, you just can't win. I mean, and there is even you can't win with it, and also there's also the deeper sentence they try to get through, the deeper sentiment they try to get through with her character even being there, that she was there because she was Muslim, right? Which at the time in 1996. Seemed extreme reaction to an authoritarian rule, right? That you would then send someone to prison and deport them off because they were Muslim, and then it is interesting that back then it was a really, ridiculous idea. And even today it's much more like, okay, well, that's a ridiculous idea. But, this was 1996. So about 6 years later, all of a sudden it became like, well, this is not a ridiculous idea anymore. Right. Once you had around 2001 to 2002, 2003, in that time frame, that became like this much more of a serious topic, about whether or not you would have people placed in prisons for their religious faith. Right. And so even though the reason that she was there, I thought was an interesting nod and maybe a little bit ahead of its time in terms of trying to, communicate ideas about how authoritarian rules can run amok. I did still find it fun and humorous the way that after she espouses a love for L.A., she gets shot.
Man, you're getting all serious up in here.
Yeah. Well, I think there's look, I think this movie has a lot of serious points. There really are statements to be made. The movie does make some statements about various things, right? It talks about the different aspects of culture. And even though it is put in this campy, fun bubblegum packaging, right? There are still beats here and there of things that are, serious topics. And so I think that it can be really enjoyed both ways, right? You can go with the fun of it, which is the best way, and I highly recommend doing that, right? But also there are moments of little things here and there. Maybe there are even throwaway lines. Maybe they're things you may not notice on the first watch, but there are various little points and little beats of where they are trying to make a serious commentary, about society and where things can go if the country and our leadership goes the wrong way, goes in an authoritarian, goes towards an authoritarian regime. And so I feel this movie can be appreciated for both points.
For sure. And you know what? I think, unfortunately, that is something that is often overlooked whenever people start bashing this movie for silly things, is that whenever you take apart some of the layers, it does have some interesting things to say. But since you already talked on that, let me talk about things that are just silly and not important.
Absolutely. Please do.
Going back just a little bit to some of the things you were talking about with Taslima, I thought it was interesting what they did with her character. And though I don't know that it was Carpenter's intention, I look at her character as kind of a red herring comparing to Escape from New York. Because in Escape from New York, Kurt Russell's character, Snake Plissken, comes across Brain and his girlfriend, Maggie, played by Adrienne Barbeau. I think that whenever we meet Taslima in this movie, we kind of start to feel like, oh, okay, so this has been a carbon copy up to this point. Surely this is Maggie, only for this character to get shot to death a couple minutes later. So I thought that was kind of like a poke in a way that, hey, this isn't exactly the same. You might be expecting some things, but not all of them are going to match the previous movie. That's just my take on it anyway.
So to be semi-contrarian there, I felt that. Yes, to be semi-contrarian, I felt that it was the same as first. I thought Taslima was less important than Maggie and more like the girl in, I believe her actual credit is girl in Chock full of nuts. At the beginning of Escape from New York, she's the girl that's in the store or the restaurant when the zombies start coming out of the beginning.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't make it either, right? And I equated Taslima to her, and not I didn't project the importance of what Maggie was doing to Taslima's character.
Okay, I can totally see why you'd say that. However, I must disagree, and the reason I disagree is because, for the reasons that you already explained, with her little monologue there about why she is in Los Angeles, I think, seriously, just the way she delivers that monologue gives her character so much more weight than just the throwaway character that we got hiding in that diner in Escape from New York. So I guess then, in a way, if I was going to try to compromise, I'd say it's somewhere in the middle.
Okay. I guess we can meet that happy medium, and meet somewhere in the middle. But I think that a part of the way that just made it where a throwaway character had a little bit more to do and say, because she gave this great impassioned speech of why LA was great, and then they kill her. It's great. It was I laughed out loud when that happened. I was crying when I saw that.
Hey, so, it's all sunshine and rainbows here on Silver Linings, folks.
Exactly. Yeah, that might say something about me, but I don't care. It was hilarious. So.
And then, real quick, just going to touch on this real quick. Bruce Campbell. I thought that his screen time, though short, was, in holding with a lot of the other big name actors that were in this movie. I mean, when you think about it, Peter Fonda's Pipeline really didn't have much more time on screen either, although I think he's more memorable because of the surfing scene. Pam Grier really didn't have that much when you think about it. A lot of these people. So, but the screen time that he did get, I thought that that was a very interesting little set piece that they did there. And like you said, interesting satirical little jab at plastic surgery in Los Angeles. and not just Los Angeles, but in our country.
Yeah, the movie did have a lot of at the time famous actors with small bit parts in it, and but
what you gonna do?
Exactly. I don't have anything to add to that.
This is insane.
It is. That's the point.
Okay.
But speaking of which, we do have a really great cast in this movie, and I think we just need to shout out some of these names because we're not going to get to every single scene in this movie, although I'd like to. But, there are just some stellar performances here. The first, if I may, the first one that I really just want to talk about real quick is Cliff Robertson as the president, because I think that not only did they give this part so much more meat than in the first movie, but it is played really, really menacingly well by Cliff Robertson. And I think that he really channels Pat Robertson. You know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
The televangelist.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And that's who the character was based on initially.
Really?
Yes. When they were writing that character, they were basing it on Pat Robertson.
Imagine that. Well, there you go.
Yes.
But I thought that was great. And I think that he really relishes the role. And you could totally see a militant, maniacal, evangelical person in power doing things like this. It's really a great part. And I think Cliff Robertson, not to beat a dead horse, not to sound like a broken record, not to toot my own horn, but he did a great job.
I agree with that. I think that he really did a good job of taking what was, also in the grand scheme of things, a limited amount of screen time and creating a character that you disliked. Right. And when I guess in sticking with the comparison and contrasting of this movie from Escape from New York, when the president in this movie fails, right, you are glad. Right, you don't like he has done enough to create the sense of, oh, he's evil. He's not only been able to finagle an earthquake into a lifetime appointment of power, but also he's willing to do anything to Snake, who we like. He's also willing to. He wants his own daughter killed. He's basically doing anything he can to keep and maintain power. So for him to go down or get his comeuppance is something that you think is great. And that to me is another credit to this remake than the first one. Right, in the first movie, the president also gets a comeuppance, but you don't really feel that he's a horrible person. You're not really against them. You don't even necessarily understand why they did it that way, right? It seems to be like, well, really the president in that one was a pretty decent, seemingly pretty decent guy. Where in this one, he is played very well and played up to be a horrible person who needs to be stopped, and even to the point of where, other actors like with Stacy Keach, who plays Commander Malloy, when the commander keeps following his orders, you start to think, hey, maybe that you should. You start to then think even poorly with those characters as well, like the other cops and everything. You're like, you guys are blindly following this person who is clearly doing things that are immoral. Especially if he's going to give the order that, hey, you need to kill your own daughter. Right. And that maybe at that point you start to say, hey, maybe we should then think, do we follow this person or not?
Yeah. And I think it's especially important that the president and Commander Malloy be played well, because the John Carpenter, and by extension this movie and its main character Snake Plissken, are very anti-establishment. And for Snake Plissken to come across as a likable good guy, you really need the help of the antagonist, the establishment characters, the president and the commander here, being unlikable.
Yes.
And Stacy Keach and Cliff Robertson both did a phenomenal job.
Yes, I agree. Although I think that the unlikability of Snake Plissken is more in the idea of the character, right? The character, having seen both movies, I would argue the character really hasn't done anything to make you dislike them or to even make you think that he's all that bad of a person, right? At the end of the day, he is doing these missions in his own self-interest. But even inside of these missions, there are decision points where he can make, where he could do, a bad thing versus a good thing. For example, even when he's doing his, he gets along with his mission and he has the thing with Taslima at the beginning that we discussed when they escaped from the surgeon, right? He doesn't have to take Taslima with him. And honestly, if he's not a somewhat decent person, he wouldn't, right? He didn't need her for any more information. She wasn't really going to be all that helpful for him. And she was just going to slow him down, right? So he could have just as easily just killed her and moved on, but he chose not to. And so I think that, if trying to build him as an anti-hero is, to me, what they do more in the trailer as the idea, but the execution in the movie is you still root for him the whole way. At no point in time do you think, that you never think that he's a bad guy.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's also interesting that in neither film, really, are we told what he did that was so bad. I mean, we know that he was some kind of a soldier, that he was a war hero, that he was this just force of nature, basically. And then something happened. Actually, I take that back. I do believe in the previous movie it said that he attempted to rob the National Mint or something along those
something
lines.
like that. It didn't.
But either way, it's very
New York.
It's very ambiguous. It's really not. Yeah. You keep talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's more or less ambiguous, really, what his crimes are. And also, I think it's interesting, especially in this movie, how the crimes are really referred to, your indiscretions or your immoralities, I think they call it, because the president, in his religious righteousness, tends to look upon things more so as sin than, say, a crime or a misdemeanor or what have you. Not that you're going to go to L.A. for a misdemeanor, but,
No, not in this world. Not in this universe, you're not.
So yeah. You know what we have not talked about?
What is that?
The L.A. bad guy, Cuervo Jones.
Yeah.
You said all that needs to be said right there.
Yeah, So I guess I'll give my quick 2 cents on it, and then I'll shut up about it. So I felt that he was they made him look like Che Guerrero, and then they just made it like a bad stereotypical, hey, we're going to use a South American terrorist that's in LA that, can speak Spanish. Go. Right. And so I think that his character was the motivation. I didn't feel that was really that great. And then even the execution of the character, I just didn't find it to be super compelling. I mean, I was fine with him being stopped, but at no point in time did I care really one way or the other. Him being stopped meant Snake got to live. So I guess I was on board, but I didn't find him to be particularly menacing or particularly sympathetic. So I just, I was kind of just apathetic toward him and really just found him as more of a vehicle to finally explain what was in the black box.
Right. I mean, in all honesty, at the end of the day, the president is the bad guy of this picture. Cuervo Jones is pretty much just the fill-in bad guy face, basically. And he pretty much fulfills his role. I mean, he's not bad per se, but I think you hit the nail on the head. He's pretty much a generic Che Guevara character. And
yeah, he is.
And I think in that regard, the character is a product of the time this movie was made in.
Yes, I agree. And also I think he's really more that he's not the true. I mean, the president is the real bad guy in this movie, right? Cliff Robertson is the bad guy, and Snake Plissken is our hero, and that really is where things are set up. And everybody else is, a supporting character to those means. And the one, I guess, since we're in covering the cast, the one of the things we should talk about is Map to the Stars Eddie, who is played by Steve Buscemi, who's. I find it great, but then I like Steve Buscemi because, at the end of the day, while Steve Buscemi is a good actor and has a decent range, there are lots of movies where Steve Buscemi's playing, it's Steve Buscemi, right? And so he's great in it, and he's entertaining. His loyalty flip-flops scene to scene, right? He has, and I think that, there's a credit to, and I'll say this from the acting and the performance of Steve Buscemi. I think there's a credit to him in the movie in that he flip-flops loyalty back and forth between, Snake and, oh goodness, was it Cuervo Jones? And honestly, whoever else can then help him get to whatever he thinks his next thing should be, right? He flip-flops back and forth, he betrays people, and really at no point in time do you hate him, right? You don't necessarily want him to die, you don't want him to go away and everything. You maintain a sense of empathy towards him, and where you're kind of like, hey, I still kind of like him. He's still funny, entertaining, and even though I may or may not want him to succeed, at no point in time do I want him to die or anything
Sure,
like that.
yeah.
You're just kind of like and so I think that is, some of that's going to be the writing and the storytelling, but at the end of the day, I think that it is a statement of a hidden gem in this movie, in that that's a difficult performance to do, right? Because he does change loyalties scene to scene. Right. And so, you want to kind of hate him, but you never really do. And I think that is really, that is also another really kind of a hidden thing about this, in the overall criticisms of this movie and what people think about it as a whole, some of the little things you can pull out of it there are great little performances, like what Steve Buscemi is doing to make you not hate a weaselly character.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that comes down to his performance, because, and I know that's essentially what you just said, but as far as the writing of this movie goes, there is no reason whatsoever to care about Map to the Stars Eddie. But the way Steve Buscemi portrays him, you can't help but have just a little bit of empathy for him, like you said. So I give full credit for that empathy to Mr. Buscemi. Hats off. So that's pretty much our cast of characters, and they are wonderful. But before we start to wrap things up here, I think we do need to examine the ending of this movie, because I believe that it is a vast improvement on Escape from New York, and I think that there are a lot of layers to it, and I really, really found myself enjoying what Carpenter and his actors lent to this ending here. And also, if I'm not mistaken, this ending is the reason why Kurt Russell has a writing credit on this movie. I think that this is where
yes, it is.
Had some input. Yeah. So in the ending, we have Snake and his posse, which at this point in time includes Utopia, the president's daughter, Hershey and her gang, all escaping that helicopter. Hershey and her gang get blown up because...
Conveniently.
I know, right? Never putting any kids in the back seat ever again. It's because of this movie. No, but... and then... what happens is we see Snake put one of those devices that they control the satellites with on Utopia, and then makes her jump out of the helicopter. And then right before he gets out, or right before the helicopter crashes, he manages to get out. And then there's the president and Malloy and that whole group of thugs. Sorry, Next Reel Film Board. Right there to just get their loot and do what they're going to do. Stinking bad guys. And so then what happens is
Snake's playing some three-dimensional chess. And so I think that there's really there's the problem that happens, and then there's a resolution that works. So there are three-dimensional chess. That he put the fake disc in Utopia's pocket, and then he had the real disc on him. When they come out, then he offers the one that he has, which is the real disc that would give him the real power. And then they say no. Then Commander Malloy, then brilliantly, I will put in air quotes, decides to search Utopia to see if that she has a disc on her. She does. That is the fake disc, and that is the one that they take. And then from there, then the president makes his idle threat to, I believe it was Cuba in Argentina, I think it was Cuba and Argentina, that he was going to, shut down, do an EMP pulse to shut them down so that they would be living in the 1400s. Turns out that he had the fake one, and then Snake has the real one, who then chooses to, once it's discovered that he has the real one, he then chooses to set in the world code and then bring the entire world to the Dark Ages. Right. So there's the good part in that, the president does then fail. right? And that's something we've been rooting for because the president is the bad guy and he's an evil person in this movie. And then our hero decides to take everyone back to, where there's no electronics. And so that part and that comeuppance and everything is great. And it's a very satisfying ending in that manner. I think that it's, how they got there was a little bit convoluted, even in the ending. But the fact that they got there is the right resolution, and it should be. And it made sense why Snake would be effectively, he's going to give the middle finger to the world at this point and say, hey, we're all just going to reset to the 1400s.
I think I looked at that not even so much as him giving the middle finger to the world, but, no matter which move he decides to make here, someone's going to have the upper hand. And I think that this was his way of leveling the playing field for everybody. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a crummy thing to wind up happening, but at least everybody winds up on the same level.
Yes, I guess you could see it that way. I honestly hadn't thought of it that way. But that does work. And then that makes it where even though the country of America is being invaded at the end of this, the fact that they lose the electronics makes it where it then goes back to whatever guns they have in their possession in hand-to-hand combat, right? So it does go back to that. So it does level the playing field out, and it just kind of, it's, to me, I also viewed it as it is a good way to end not only the story, but to me end the character, right? To say, hey, we're just going to have this character. He has now shut down the world, and then he's just going to go off into the sunset and do, live his life. Right, because without electronics, he's not going to be able to be traced from one state to the next or anything else like that. And he's going to just go and live the rest of his life doing, whatever we are going to assume criminal activities he can get up to. But I think that it was a good way to put an ending to this character.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely liked this ending a lot better than the ending for Escape from New York, because while they both mirror each other to an extent, this one I think makes more sense and is more fulfilling. Because, I mean, for one thing, in Escape from New York, the president and, whether or not he was a bad guy was kind of up in the air. I mean, we knew he wasn't the best guy, but we're basically judging him from the question that Snake asks him, like, what do you think about all the people that died for you? And he's like, well, he gives him the politician's answer, like, well, I my hat's off to them and whatever. And then he goes on TV and he plays the tape, and Snape. This isn't Harry Potter. Snake has the real tape that he needed. In this one, you have more defined roles specifically in our antagonist, the president. And you have Snake kind of pulling a switcheroo, but it's not the same. He has more of a purpose behind it than just, hey, F the man, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Even though that is very much in Snake's character, because it's very established that, I think that both movies establish him as anti-the man, anti-establishment. And
I find that is the one thing I have quibbles with this as a whole, in that I still don't feel that I don't think either movie was able to successfully make Snake Plissken and even an anti-establishment character, right? He is a straightforward, he's a good guy. There's not, it's like they talk about him in the past tense. Like, in each movie they talk about things that he has done in the past that are supposedly horrible, but even when they discuss them, you kind of think, well, was it bad, or was you guys just, was he misunderstood? Was he really doing the right thing? Was he doing the wrong thing for the right reasons? They just don't have a real true anti-establishment bent. I mean, the Escape from New York kind of gave you a little bit of that in that ending, but the ending doesn't make sense, right? The ending is like, well, they were going to have world peace, and so you want anti-world peace, which is kind of like, okay, well, maybe you're kind of bad there, but it's more confusing than anger-inducing. And in Escape from L.A., again, I don't think he does anything that you wouldn't expect a regular superhero, but a regular hero of a movie, a good regular hero of a movie to do. And
okay, so check this out. In both movies,
all right,
Escape from New York and Escape from L.A., you have that moment near the beginning of the movie where they come to Snake with the deal. You're going to do this.
Yes.
And then, we'll pardon you, whatever. And in both situations, in both movies, the president comes into play in one way or another. And whenever the president comes into play, Snake treats the president, the man that you think you would give the utmost respect to because he's the leader of the nation, treats the president like a bum, basically. In the first movie, they said, we got to rescue the president. He's like, and I forget exactly what he says, but he says some offhand remark that's not taken well. And then in this movie, he actually tries to lunge at the president at one point before he realizes that, he's a hologram. And, whenever he's introduced to the president in this one, instead of saying as most people would probably say, "Oh, you're nice to meet you, sir," or what have you. His response is, "Oh, so I hear you're having domestic problems."
Right. Well, yeah, see, he definitely has some disrespect for the president, but I think even in both movies, right, the deal they're giving him, even if they say we're going to, like in the first one, they do kind of say they're going to pardon him, right? And in the second one, I think they do the same thing. But in both cases, they provide a mission that is ridiculous and impossible and a high probability of him dying. And from his perspective, he may look at it, which I would understand of, what, I'm Snake Plissken. I'm a big time criminal. People know me, pretty famous. You put me in amongst a bunch of other criminals, it'll be a while before I'm near at the top of this food chain anyway. So I would rather just take my chances and be in prison than to risk my life to die for you.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just don't. Yeah.
Suffice it to say, we have slightly differing views on the anti-establishmentness of the character, but
yes. So should we move on to the filmmaker's goals?
Let's do that.
Sad story. You gotta smoke.
So at the end of the day, we have this movie. It is what it is. Some people like it, some people don't. One thing we need to examine is, what were the filmmakers' goals whenever they made this movie? And I thought it was really interesting because I found this one interview with John Carpenter that was specifically about Escape from L.A. And the one phrase that he kept repeating over and over again in regards to what this movie was supposed to be was cowboy noir. Cowboy noir.
What would be another example?
I don't know what another example of that would be, but I thought this was interesting. I would argue that he met that goal, and the reason I say that is there is actually somebody within the Next Real family, and I'm not going to name any names because I don't know if they want to be associated with this movie or not. They didn't seem to like it. But one thing they said in their review about this movie was the ending of this movie with the music and everything did feel a little bit like a spaghetti Western. So I guess there's that.
It does. And that's the music is one of the few things about the movie that I was not a big fan of. So I think they just kind of just blow past
a
that.
lot of the music was very much guitar and harmonica riffs, and so it was very, I don't want to say country-ish because I wouldn't call it country-ish, but it's Western-ish.
Yes, yeah, it did have that feel. But I think that. At least to me, when I think about what the filmmakers' goals were, right? I mean, you have the hard and fast of them saying about it being cowboy noir, but I just look at it like that they really just had two goals, right? This is really a remake. So they wanted to keep the theme of America falling under an authoritarian ruler with the solution of putting all the undesirables in one place and away from the good citizens.
I'll follow that.
Country, right? Then keep the theme that our anti-hero will not let them win in the end, right? And then make the movie itself more fun to watch. Ramp up the stunts, do some things that are out of character, punch up a little bit of the dialogue. And I think that is, they were successful in that, right? They were successful in, we wanted to take the skeleton of Escape from New York and make it a more fun movie. And I feel that they really did succeed in that and taking that idea and making it more fun, making it more watchable, making it more rewatchable, right? Because even after when you see Escape from New York once, I think you're pretty much, that's good, right? There's nothing about it you feel you missed. You want to see anything else again. But Escape from L.A., there's lots of little fun scenes and little nuggets of, hey, maybe I'll watch that one.
Sure, yeah. I agree. It definitely would have achieved those goals. And I agree. I think that is, whether they actually acknowledged it outright or not, I think those would be the goals that the filmmakers had in making this film. And I don't know that I would call it better than Escape from New York because of how different that. Well, I would. You would.
It's better,
but because they are very different films. But I would definitely put it on the same plane. And I know that may shock some people, but guess what? This is Silver Linings, folks. We cross lines.
Well, I think it's shocking people that you think that they're equally as good. Escape from L.A. is much better.
All right. So that being said, we know you think it's better. We know I think it's the same. Out of a 5-star ranking, what would you give it?
Well, in looking at it on my flick chart, when rank the movies there, it places for me, which is 148 out of 397. So it makes it a definitely above average movie. It's a good, enjoyable movie. And then according to this, then I should rate it about 3 stars. And so I find that, for me personally, I think it's a little bit better than the 3-star movies. I'd probably rate it about 3.5 stars. I think that the fun factor of the movie really it makes it a little bit better. It makes it better, right? It makes it more enjoyable because it's not just a good movie with a few flaws, but it's a good movie with a few flaws that's fun to watch and that you can enjoy watching it the first time, you can enjoy watching it again, right? And you can definitely see it in multiple ways, multiple viewings, you can see different perspectives. And so I really feel that it is a 3.5.
I agree. That's exactly what I would give it. 3.5, almost bordering on 4 stars. And on my own flick chart, it ranks at 64% out of the movies that I've seen. So definitely over that IMDb rule of 6 or more. Yeah. So we both rate this as above average. So I think that takes us to the final evaluation of Silver Linings, which begs the question, does this film deserve the bad rap that it gets? And obviously from this discussion that you and I have had, that answer is no.
No, it does not. It is a good, fun, enjoyable movie, and it is better than the original. And that is a hard thing for a sequel to obtain, because there are very few sequels that are better than
for sure. Well, Ocean, I think that wraps that up then. This was a great conversation about a great movie. Hopefully, if you're listening to this episode, you'll give this movie another chance. If you weren't that big a fan of it, maybe you'll see some things about it now that you'll see in a different light. Maybe you'll like. And if not, that's okay too. We won't judge you too harshly. Ocean, thanks so much. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. It was always a pleasure, and looking forward to the next one.
This has been Silver Linings, part of the Next Reel family of film podcasts on TrueStory.fm. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and that we may have even inspired you to give this movie a second chance. If you'd like to get more involved with the Next Reel community, visit thenextreel.com/membership. For just $1 a month, you can become a one-reeler and join our online community in our Discord server. And for a few dollars more a month, become a two-reeler supporter and join us for show live streams as we record, early access to shows in your very own personal podcast feed, and access to the super secret member channels in Discord. Plus, you can now support with a single annual donation at either level. Thank you to everyone who's joined us and to all who are checking us out. Your support allows us to keep producing and growing the Next Reel family of podcasts here at TrueStory.fm. See you in the next episode.
I love the conversations that so many of our hosts have had on their shows. Steve and JJ on Trailer Rewind, Ray and Ocean on Silver Linings, even Tommy's short-lived Wait, Hear Me Out.
So many listeners want to make sure they've watched the movie before tuning in to any discussion on our podcasts. Well, you know, the best way to watch the movie is to look it up on our watch page.
Our watch page lists all the movies that we have discussed on all the shows from the Next Reels family of podcasts, including the one you're listening to right now. It's your one-stop shop for Apple and Amazon links where you can rent or buy the movie.
Trailer Rewind movies like Raw,
The Nice Guys,
The Peanut Butter Falcon,
or Free Fire.
No, Wait, Hear Me Out movies like Josie and the Pussycats or Return of the Living Dead.
Or Silver Linings movies like Repo Men, Daredevil, and The Wolfman.
Plus, by using those links to rent or purchase movies, Apple and Amazon will show us a little bit of love, which allows you to support our family of shows with minimal effort.
It's a great way to support the show and find something to watch.
That's right. Head over to thenextreel.com/watch to pick out your next movie and start watching today.